This time on PedalBox, we're trying to make sure that our steering rack survives us abusing it in this car, because we're not running a power steering pump, but ultimately it does need fluid, and when you turn the wheel, it pumps the fluid out everywhere, and we'd kind of rather avoid that. We removed all of the power steering system from this car other than the power steering rack, so we no longer have to deal with any lines or the pump on the engine itself. Unfortunately, with it being a power steering rack, it still needs power steering fluid in order to lubricate it, because without it, it will probably bind up and it will eventually fail due to wear. Now, we tried running the rack without any fluid going in or out of it to see what would happen, and it basically just pumps whatever's in the system out through these two banjo bolts. That means we need to have some sort of feed and return plus a fill port right down on the rack. And I thought about trying to get something machined up that would be a nice little manifold that fit between the two ports, but they are not that conveniently located to make that work. Plus, it's a lot simpler to just use a pipe and some fittings. So that is one of the jobs for today, and while I'm making up this basic fitting set to try and get it to loop round and have a small reservoir located somewhere in here, Chris is going to deal with one of the major panel gap problems we have left on the car.
So our side pockets are mostly pretty good. Mechanically, they open up nicely. We've got some soundproofing and lining on the inside of them, so we're in pretty good shape kind of mechanically and functionally. But we've got the same problem here as we have with so many other bits of the car. We've got these sharp edges and gaps that the IVA man isn't going to be very happy with. Now, at this widest point, the gap, I think somewhere around here, is just about 8 mil across, which is well over the 4 mil lower limit for gaps that you don't have to have like big rolled edges. You can just have kind of your sheet metal at the edge can just be folded back very, very tightly if it's only on a 4 millimeter gap. So the requirements become a lot easier to meet on those small gaps. So to take up this gap, to shrink it down, and also to meet that radius requirement on the edge, we're going to do the same trick here that we've done a few other places. We're going to take some of this 4 mil solid metal rod and just weld it in the gap here. Now, we've decided, mostly on vibes, that we're going to weld it onto the top panel so that as it comes round, you've got a rolled edge on the on here, so if anyone does manage to get their fingers in between, it's not so much of a guillotine, and also partly because we can take it off and finish it off the car if we decide that we need to. So we've already cut this down to the right length. It fits in there quite nicely. It's just about the right shape, so we can make a nice little clean patch on the ends. I can tack this on, and then we can figure out how we're going to kind of seal up this whole edge. You know, I'm probably not going to seam weld it because we do have foam already on the inside, and that will obviously melt with the heat. So probably going to use like panel sealant or maybe some body filler, but we'll figure that out in a minute. So you've got a tack on each end. It's nowhere near secure yet, but we can at least check if it will open up fine, and it seems to. Didn't catch on anything as it came round. It didn't sort of hit the top edge or anything, which we hope to be the case, but we're happy to have been proven right. So welded up, we've tidied the edge up a little bit, and we've thrown a nice big layer of very fuzzy filler over the top. So once this is set in a few hours, we should be able to sand that back nice and smooth and paint this up. We've also done the other side. It took a little bit more work to get that little metal rod on the edge into the right place, just because of the way that one kind of overhung the side of the body and everything. But we've done all the same things with that, welded the rod on underneath, put a big fat layer of filler over the top, so we can tidy those up in a bit. Now, while I wait for this to all harden up, let's go see how Aid's doing with that power steering line.
This is what we hope will be our power steering loop. I've spent the morning rummaging through this hose box and cutting and trimming pieces down, and now we have two banjo bolts with a fill port that should sit at the very top of our steering rack, so we should be able to dump in, and any excess as it pumps round should go up into a small reservoir, which hopefully will work nicely. There is only one small problem. This M18 banjo bolt is absolutely perfect, and when I measured up, I assumed naively that both were identical. Unfortunately, the second bolt is M16, which means there is an enormous amount of play in here, and that's not going to work, at least not long term. I am hopeful that with some copper crush washers we should be able to get this tight enough and sealed enough that we can put some fluid in it and do a test. If not, the fluid is going to come out very, very quickly and we're all going to have a bad time. So now I'm just going to fit this around the back of the steering column and put the first one in, which is the correct thread. Now I'm not going to put the M16 one in yet because I'm going to talk about this. This is our little reservoir tank. This is going to mount somewhere just around here. We're probably going to put a bracket off this windscreen wiper support just so it sits down around there and it's got a nice short run in. And we've got some hose that should do, again, short term, because unfortunately this is a couple of mil too large, but with some Jubilee clamps that will fit on there nicely. So first up is making the bracket for this to fit onto, and then we can put the rest of this together.
You know what we should have done? Should have welded a stud onto it so that we could kind of drop this down just onto a little pin. It's welded like this up from underneath or something. Well, we're all welded up in place. The bracket here does look pretty beefy, but it's the only piece of bar stock we could find, and it does have the nice side effect of fitting really nice on a little locator pin on the power steering reservoir, so it's all pretty good actually. The reservoir came off a Jeep, I think a Cherokee, but I'm not 100% sure, and that means I think we're back up to like 15 cars in this thing in total, which is still quite fun. We've got our loop mostly bolted together, still with the wrong banjo, but we've got the proper one arriving tomorrow on a special delivery, so we can get this properly assembled in the morning and do a genuine test with all the right pieces with proper fluid in. On top of that, this hose off the reservoir isn't quite what we thought. We ordered a 12mm T-piece that's already in the hose there because we thought this was a 12mm hose. It turns out it's only 12mm for like this first inch that's on the reservoir. It necks down to like 8 or 10 immediately. So we've ordered another T-piece that's going to be arriving tomorrow as well, and that'll mean we can test this whole thing properly. But we have, at least with everything in place, we've been able to work out that the hose will reach to the T-piece. It'll all fit mechanically really quite nicely.
That'll do. Carry on.
While we wait for those to arrive, we've gone and tarted up our storage bin doors a little bit. We've tidied up the edge with that little metal filler rod went on the side. We've obviously gone over it with a bit of paint, and we're now looking quite nice, ready to reinstall. But, as usual, this happens a lot here, we got carried away and thought while we were in the storage bins, we might as well finish something that we went to initially some months ago. Now, a while ago, Aid made up these nice little aluminium plates, bent them all up into shape, and these fit kind of in the back of the storage bin to separate it from the side pod and the whole sort of intercooler area back there. Means anything that we've got in the storage bins, when we accelerate, which hopefully one day we'll manage to, nothing will go shooting back into the intercoolers. Now, Aid was so happy with the fit of these, he actually painted them, which is a very interesting decision, considering when we just went to install them now, we discovered, I mean, in fairness, actually, this one was okay. The one for the driver's side over there was miles out. So we've dangled a bunch of tape off the sides to figure out the footprint that we actually needed. We kind of put them in place and hung extra tape off the sides and everything. And then we transferred them onto the only sheet metal we had, this perforated steel. This is not a functional thing, this is just as usual. We're using the material that we have available, gone around it with some nice rubber edging just to protect our fingers and everything. And these are now ready to install. So with these on, with the doors on, and with these rear panels in, our storage bins, I think, are actually done.
Great.
A couple of days later, those fittings have all arrived. We've got the loop in place on the steering rack, we've got the reservoir plumbed, and we've got the front of the car up in the air so that we can spin it around easily without dragging the tyres on the bricks. So we can throw some fluid in, run it around, and make sure our guess was accurate. We've put some fluid in the reservoir now. We've run the steering rack around a good few times to try and squeeze out most of the bubbles and air that's trapped in the system, and it mostly seems to have stopped. I'm still seeing a couple of bubbles coming through, but it's also not gulping down lots of fluid anymore. So I think we can now do a final, run it backward and forward all the way from lock to lock a couple of times. And if A can just keep an eye on the reservoir while I do this to make sure it doesn't go low, we should, in theory, all be good. So the power steering rack seems pretty happy. Now, it's been a very long time since I watched any videos on how power steering racks work or read any technical literature. So I don't really know how the power assistance part of this thing works, but the part that we care about is that when we turned the steering rack around, it would pump fluid out of one port. When we turned it around the other way, it would pump fluid out of the other one. So our guess was that we just had to loop them together. We're kind of imagining that they may be opposite sides of a plunger or something that moves as you steer. The important thing is that now that we've connected them, it's kind of doing what we expected. We start moving the steering wheel, and this part is mildly surprising, but not scary. We see the level in the reservoir come up a little bit, like the pump has kind of moved a bit of fluid out of itself overall. And then after a second or so, it comes back down to the same level as we keep turning the wheel. So obviously fluid is coming out of one side, returning into the other, and everything is behaving pretty much as we thought. So hopefully we're all good. With our power steering rack full of fluid and working, and with our storage bin doors all tidied up and safe, we're 2 jobs closer to finally getting this thing on the road. And here you get a sneak peek of something else we've been working on, tidying up some of the bodywork, because as usual, it's all been a little bit affected by the weather. We're not quite done with the steering yet. We do still need to put new tie rod ends in onto the hubs. The catch is, because we're still working on the front suspension, still rejigging things, we don't want to put new ends in that we're then having to bash out repeatedly while we finish that stuff up. So they're going to be among the last things we do. But apart from that, steering system is good. Now, as far as the bodywork and everything goes in front of us, if you want to help us buy the many, many cans of satin black paint and all the body filler that we need to tart this thing up again, ready for show season, you can jump on shop.pedalbox.show where you can buy various pieces of swanky merch. You can't buy this one. This is a very, very old t-shirt, been out of production for a long time. But we've got plenty others available, and hats and hoodies and mugs and all the other good stuff. You can also jump on patreon.com/pedalboxshow and support us directly there. Patreon members do get a bit of a discount at the merch store, so if you are thinking of ordering something, maybe consider also hopping on Patreon beforehand. And that is it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.